So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end. As per Yeshayahu the prophet, we find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Mashiach laid waste for many centuries. As we read it in Yeshayahu the prophet, it's always important reading then sections of Daniel and Revelation. Most importantly, the layer related with the restoration period, and then the importance of the kingdom of the East, China, as this great system of the East then is implemented around the world. So then, because of this forward motion from the East, there are some adjustments that must be done in the West. So then, the lining up of the events from Yeshayahu, Daniel, and Revelation can be then structurized in a way that people can relate with the actual news of the countries related with a couple of situations: trade, and there is also religion. As was said before many times, the main components of a society is then trade, religion, and a military force. Now the religion section of it, from the Israelic lineage, we understand obviously is tabernacling. Now in the world there are several number of religions, and because of the fact of Constantine during the time of the Roman Empire, and then the religion that was implemented, this religion must be then re-established. Now there were many dictators prior of our time, and they tried to re-establish the Roman Empire. But truly, as an empire in itself, the Holy Scripture, the Torah not as much, but then the prophets mostly, since they related the future of the Gentiles and also tabernacling, there are sections of religion related with Christianity. And truly, it's not a direct line from the original manuscripts. There is a detour that was taken when then Constantine decided that his religion would have a certain path, and because of the religion aspects related with the original manuscript but not truly in line with it, you find then France once again taking a leadership of certain sections related with religion and also related with the European trade. Now this is when the situation becomes a bit complicated. Because of the importance of revelation, or then Galah, we find then France related with General Berthier many decades ago, and France was against the papacy And then the Pope, during the time of the great religion reform, was then put into prison, and then he died. So then Daniel, you find then the horn of the beast, the tiny horn, was then plucked out of its place. So Daniel related this information 500 years prior of the coming of the Hamashiach ben Yosef, and the scripture itself gave us very precise understanding of the period of time where then this beast had a tiny horn and was then removed. Now, ever since the papacy, they were never able truly to get themselves in a total organized way ever since. But then the Holy Instructions are then giving us a few clues of the structuring of Vayikra, the 23rd chapter. But then the Restoration period gives us a couple of aspects of religion, a couple of aspects of tabernacling, one of them being tabernacling itself, the other being the temple. You find then the Vatican helping Israel to build the third temple. Quite honestly, a paradox in the entire history of this religion. So then, the European Union, they are in a very precarious situation religion-wise, and a very unique situation trade-wise. Now, with the exit of Great Britain is a power in itself. And quite honestly, they don't want to get involved in the European side because of the tremendous problems with their economy. So then, Germany is taking the leadership as far as the financial organization. Though there are flaws, they are truly taking a leadership in the continent of Europe. Now, there is left out the religion aspect, and then a great player of these is then once again France. So then, as was during the time of the papacy and General Berthier, so as the repetition of these conditions are found then in the continent of Europe. Now, Revelation does not give every aspect of the religion, but it does indicate the prostitute, and truly the prostitute does not have an exact understanding of trade, but it does have an exact understanding of religion. Now, the prostitute has no link with trade from China, because the prostitute and the dragon, they are not similar. So certain aspects of Europe does not relate with trade and the prostitute. However, you find a portion of it on chapter 1:7 that speaks of the prostitute as a mystery of the woman and the beast of prey that bears her and has 7 heads and 10 horns. And then continues explaining then the riches related with it, and then explains Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, and the contaminations of the earth. So then, he speaks of a power being granted, that there is a link with trade, but it is truly governed by a religious system. China, however, is 100% pure trade. So this is when then Revelation becomes interesting but yet obscure. Because each aspect is spoken of by Yeshayahu the prophet, and Yeshayahu the prophet was absolutely hated by the entire nation. The nation wanted to go in a certain way. Yeshayahu was pointing the proper way, and he was murdered. So Israel murdered its own prophet. So when nations, they try to manipulate a certain course of action that does not line up with the holy instructions, they always ended up murdering. So then, because of the power of France, when the system was then placed on standby because of the death of the Pope, then you find France once again taking a role of a religious aspect, yet linked with the trade from Europe, and also becoming influential in military aspects. So then, you find General Berthier is already given you the answer. General Berthier that made a campaign against the papacy, and then they had captured the Pope. He went to prison and he died in prison. So there was an entire change of the religious aspect, and as a consequence there were changes in trade. So making sure Yeshayahu the prophet and his prophecies are in line with the divine order, there is then the European situation. There is a section of trade and finances led by Germany, and a religious aspect that is being restored, lining from the Roman Empire, in line with Revelation, in line with Daniel, and a trade aspect as a result of these lining up of a political religious aspect. Now, it sounds very complicated, but truly, Revelation, when each person takes sections of these layers and they line up with Daniel, then it becomes clear. Now, this understanding is not 100% inclusive. There are other aspects of the second transition, and that's where then mostly of these religious and political and military lining up is then taking place in much later in the future. But Revelation is already given us a few clues of the religious aspect of France. At this point in time, they are involved with a mediation from US and also the Soviets. So then the time of the 1,000 years of the seat, or then 1,000 years of Nahashatan, or the 1,000 years without the influence of the Hamashiach ben Yosef, depending on what layer you are talking of, but there was 1,000 years granted, so then the Hamashiach ben Yosef would not involve himself with the spirit of time. So the new world order was then led by a couple of countries, Great Britain, United States. It does not mean that these places are evil or then beasts. It simply was given 1,000 years of time for the world to organize itself without the influence of tabernacling. And this period of time has expired. Now comes the first transition, and because of a standing situation of the West and a weakened system of trade being taken over by the kingdom of the East, you find then a shock of powers, once again spoken of by Daniel, the 7th chapter, and also in Daniel, the 11th chapter, you find sections of these understandings then shaping itself until the second transition. By the time the second transition takes place, the political religious aspect then is nearly lined up. So then the trouble with the United States and the Soviet Union is already explained in Daniel 11. Speaks of a very important word from Hebrew known as netzer, related with the sprout that would come out from the lineage of David. But when this word is used with a Gentile wording, is speaking of a system, because tabernacling is a system of feasts. So then, reading from these, you find then Paris related with the climate situations. Now you find in France leading the situation regarding then the Syria deal. So what then the other dictators tried to re-establish the Roman Empire, it is being like or as a re-establishment because of the religious aspect being reactivated by France. Because of the European side and where the papacy came from, And because of the history of the Inquisition and so many other crusades that were instigated by them, the power of papacy won't ever be restored to its former position. Now there are sections in Daniel 11 explaining that there are portions of these subdivided. So then, truly these US and the Soviet Union, they're going to reach a line with the help of France. As the world was readjusted after the death of the Pope, when he was put in prison by General Berthier. So these facts are not 100% inclusive. There are other details in Revelation, though at this point in time obscured. There are points of formation from trade of Europe, the religious aspect of Europe, and the military aspect of the old system of the New World Order, and then the system of the Soviet Union. These considerations must be then evaluated during this time prior of these first transitions end. So then, next time we'll evaluate more of the European situation related with the political, religious aspect. And then later, the point of including trade, but then the trade of Europe lining up with the East. So then please stay tuned, much more coming up.